I'm calling it right now. The Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be the best-selling video game console of all time. The Switch was well on its way to reaching that record, and honestly, it might still get there. It's not like the sales of the console will drop dead once the Switch 2 comes out, but the sales will slow down significantly. If Nintendo doesn't cut the price of the Switch though, then maybe it won't reach that goal. The PS2 has held the crown for nearly 20 years. Even considering the fact that console generations have been lasting 7 to 8 years, no other console has come close since it has reached this milestone. At least not until the Nintendo DS, that is. The current record is 160 million for the PS2, and the DS was not that far off at 154 million. I mean, that's another whole 6 million more that the PS2 sold, but what's 6 million when we're talking about hundreds of millions of consoles sold? The fact that the DS came this close was truly a remarkable feat, in my opinion. The Switch is sitting at around 146 million consoles sold, which is not that far off, relatively speaking, in third place. And it's managed to get this far in 8 years without a single price cut. Sure, there were holiday deals and bundles here and there, but the MSRP has remained at $300 since its initial inception in 2017. One of the popular talking points of speculation for the Switch 2 is how much it's going to cost. I think one of two things are going to happen. One, either Nintendo finally cuts the price of the Switch from $300 to $200, and then Switch 2 takes the $300 price slot. Or two, Nintendo keeps the price of the Switch the same at $300 and introduces the Switch 2 at $400. Yes, I said it, $400. In this predictions video, that's what I think Nintendo will price their next console at. And if I'm wrong, then no more than $450. I do not think they'll go for a price tag of $500, but they'll consider it. I'll talk more about that later. Nate Drake, a reputable insider of the video game industry, confirmed within his knowledge that the Final Fantasy VII Remake series will come to the Switch 2 and evidently Xbox as well. TVPH has a video which I will link in the description talking about how all the major publishers of video games are supporting Switch 2 with their most ambitious upcoming titles. He goes on to explain that the Switch 2's raw power will resemble the PS4 and Xbox One at worst, and will resemble Xbox Series S at best. And to be honest, that does make Nate Drake's claims about Final Fantasy VII Remake sound more believable. And if this ends up happening, that means that the next generation of Nintendo, which is kind of a mid-generation in and of itself, is going to bring back the vibes of the 6th generation when software support went across Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox consoles. You know, back when this generation started, I thought the PS5 was going to one day finally break the PS2's records just because of the crazy, intense, insane amount of hype there was for the console back in 2020. Do you remember that? During the pandemic, the first days of pre-orders, all of the websites crashed within like minutes, and for a whole 2 years, it was nearly impossible to find a PS5 unless you paid a scalper's price for it. But when the console was finally in stock, that level of demand for it kinda went out the window. The PS5 went from being out of stock everywhere to sitting on store shelves, struggling to be bought from 2024 onward. People blame it on a number of factors, and I think the biggest problem is the price. The PS5 has remained at $500 since it came out, but it's been profitable since 2021, which means Sony could have afforded to cut the price, but instead of cutting it, they actually ended up raising the price of the console in certain countries. And on top of that, they had the nerve to price the PS5 Pro at $700. I was hoping what Sony would have done was cut the price of the PS5 to $400, discontinue the all-digital version, and then introduce the Pro at $500 since it doesn't have a disk drive. I was sure that with all of the PS5 Pro's bad publicity that the console was going to flop, but somehow it's actually selling better than the PS4 Pro did in the same position. But despite that, the PS5 series definitely won't even come close to PS2's milestone. They'll be lucky if it even catches up to the PS4, which, at the moment, they're still on track for. But the Switch 2 is on pace to outdo the hype of the PS5, albeit the price hasn't been revealed yet. But as long as they price it at $400, I think the hype will stay this way. $450 should be fine too, but I think $500 will be pushing it a little bit. Honestly, I do think Nintendo will consider going with that price point, simply because it has worked out in the beginning for PS5 and Xbox Series X, but I think it's in their best interest to go with a price point that's less than half $1,000. We'll find out soon enough. April is right around the corner. No king gets to wear the crown forever. According to Gemini, PS2 has been sitting on the throne since the mid-2000s, and production ceased in 2013 at 160 million consoles sold. Coincidentally, up until last year, the official sales figure was 155 million, which made the DS very close to matching it. But Jim Ryan cleared the air in an interview around the time he left Sony. PS2 was also the fastest console to sell 100 million consoles. Until the DS broke that record in 2009. The PS2 also had numerous price cuts, one that got it down to match the price of the GameCube and also made it $100 cheaper than the Xbox. But as I said earlier, the Switch hasn't received any price cuts to get to the sales milestone it is at today. The PS3 came out in 2006, but the PS2 continued to sell in the millions even after that, and stopped production the same year that the PS4 came out. To my knowledge, the Switch was the first of its kind as both a handheld console and a regular console that connects to a television, aka a hybrid console. And being that it was the first of its kind, it was innovative and revolutionary, being something new and different. With the incoming Switch 2, this is a case of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And what I mean by that is that all the Switch 2 needs to be is just a massive technical leap over the original Switch, since that already had a very fruitful formula. But it's been 8 years, so it's just due for a successor now. The Switch 2 will take the mantle and carry that ongoing momentum, and as long as the price is right, nothing is stopping it from eventually breaking the PS2's near 2-decade holding record. I understand that the prediction I'm making in this video could come off as very bold, but given how successful the Switch was and how the hype of the Switch 2 is basically outpacing the hype of any other console before, I believe it will become the new king. I'm not saying it'll happen fast, it might take another 10 years, depending on the price cuts, and of course, the games. But if you already think I'm wrong, and in 2035 it turns out that I was too optimistic, feel free to come back to this video and say, I told you so. I also want to take a moment to talk about the rumors about the Xbox Prime, because nowadays, whenever there is news or discussions about the Xbox brand, it's always a doom and gloom conversation. You may think that I'm being impractical for what I'm about to say, but I'm optimistic about the future of Xbox too. The rumor about the Xbox Prime is that it's going to come out in 2006. That's 6 years after the release of the Xbox Series consoles, but it's also 2 years earlier than the rumored year of the future PS6's release, 2028. There are rumors about it coming out in 2027, but I think it's more likely to release the next year. Either way, the point that I'm trying to make is that the last time Microsoft released their next-gen console a year before Sony did, the console ended up becoming a huge success. You know I'm talking about the Xbox 360, which came out in 2005, and the PS3 that came out in 2006. The 360 became Microsoft's best-selling console of all time, and even though it still ended up in third place in the 7th generation, it's still regarded as a massive success. The reach that the 360 had solidified Microsoft as a major platform holder in the console space of the video game industry. The 360 coming out a year before the PS3 made it the first readily available option for console gamers looking to upgrade to something next gen, and because of its initial traction, it managed to gain a large enough install base to become the primary platform of development for most games during that generation. Xbox Prime releasing in 2026 would be the same scenario again. It will be the first next-gen console for gamers looking to upgrade, since it would be the newest and freshest thing on the market, and anyone who's waiting around for the next PlayStation would have to wait for another 1 or 2 years, and most people just aren't that patient. Now, if I'm right about my prediction here about the Xbox Prime, then that gives us another interesting thing to speculate about. I've been comparing its potential to what the 360 achieved, but the Nintendo console back then was the Wii, which didn't exactly compete with the PS3 and 360. I mean, it did, and it didn't at the same time. It competed in the sense that if a gamer back then had only a budget of $500 maximum to spend, then they'd have to choose one between the three consoles, either the Wii, the PS3, or the 360. But given how all of the consoles back then had pretty impressive sales figures, I get the feeling that a lot of people who owned a Wii also owned either a PS3 or 360, since the former lost a lot of third-party support, given how its hardware was more similar to PS2 and the original Xbox instead of its contemporaries. I mentioned in the beginning of my video about how video game publishers are considering the Switch 2 for its most ambitious titles, which is something they didn't do with the Wii. So if all this pans out, it means that the Switch 2 will be competing on a much closer level with its contemporaries, the PS5 and Series consoles, than the Switch was with the PS4 and Xbox One, or the Wii was with the PS3 and 360. Speculating is fun, y'all. What more can I say? Fun times are ahead. We are in the year of Switch 2, Grand Theft Auto 6, and The Weeknd's new album. If I got this video uploaded on time, then that means his album was released just yesterday. So that's pretty much it. That's all I think I had to say on this matter. If you made it to the end, I just want to say thank you again for watching this video. I honestly do appreciate having an audience, and if there's ever anything that you want me to talk about, please feel free to write about it in the comments section. I decided to make this video based on a poll that I posted about a week ago, and at first I didn't think people would vote in it at all. And this channel is going to be meant for giving my thoughts on all sorts of things. Video games, movies, TV shows, music. I did just mention The Weeknd, so maybe I'll even do a review of Hurry Up Tomorrow. So until next time, holla at your boy.